Okay, I'm alive now. Okay, now while waiting for the other join, uh, sambil menunggu teman-teman untuk join. Oke, terus gimana caranya ya? Wait, 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 wait. Bisanya nih. Hmm, hmm, saya join, join, join. Oke. Oh, ada now my daughter. Waalaikumsalam, Abang Setiono, my friend. Oh, cara live tuh begini. Oke, misalnya tes. Oke, tes. Oh, oh, di pos tunggu siap. Ini grogi juga saya nih live nih. Oke, sebentar. Sambil nunggu-nunggu sebentar lagi, kita akan membaca yang bahasa Inggris. Bentar ya. Ini Azahra. Oh, jadi kalau spam nanti oh ganti nanti Bang Pak Sutiono live. Sebentar, ini saya harus sudahi dulu. Sebentar ya, sambil baru 2 menit kita ke Azara. Azahra, Azahra, Azahra. Kita bahas dulu dia. Oke, kasih tahu dulu bahwa videonya sudah saya tonton. Video terakhirnya itu harus dibalas. Oke, ini oke. Lagi berapa jamnya saya tonton dia? 2 jam 14 menit. 2 jam 14 menit. 2 jam 14 menit. Oke, sekarang ini ke sini ya? Oh, bukan. Kemana dia? Ke sini kah? Oh ya. Yes. Wifi mana aja Bang? Hajar. Ini, sebentar dia masuk dulu ya. Masuk account dulu. Oke. Biar ini hadir dulu. Hadir. Oke. Marditop hadir. Bentar. Sebelum ini saya juga harus menghubungi eh, aduh, ini siapa sih? Bukan masalahnya. Bukan masalahnya. Siapa nih namanya? Allah, bukan ini kayaknya nih. Agus menggantikan. Hmm, hmm, oke. Ini buat ini dulu. Ya, mantap. Nanti saya juga akan hadir dengan 2 atau 3 alat. Tenang, Bang. Jadi kalau mau ketahuan berapa orang yang online sekarang, tuh kasih lah, 3 online. Oh, 3 online. Kelihatan namanya siapa sih? Kelihatan nggak? Hmm. Melihat yang online tuh gimana caranya ya? Hmm. Esa, kamu udah keluar ya? Esa. Oh, pantes. Jadi tinggal tiga orang yang online sekarang. Jadi Mardi Top, Purcil, dan Buru Cilik. Saya mau live-nya baca bahasa Inggris, Bang. Baca bahasa Inggris. Jadi Agus mengganti nih. Saya ini dulu. Saya sudahi dulu. Dan pokoknya buat berapa jam lah nih ya sambil nunggu-nunggu. Shifam. Oh, brother Shifam. How are you, Shifam? My friend from India. I will watch your channel if you go live, brother. Don't worry. Now we have 4 and Shifam from India. Uh, yes, I'm fine, Shifam. And tell me if you want to go live. I will go. I will be there for you. Actually, my my live streaming is I want to read this book. I mean this book, A History of God. But I'm not start my reading. Wait, I have some trouble with my gadget. Dulu Agus menganti. Oke, Shiva. Oh, who else? Shiva. Wawan Setiawan. Wah, brother rencekan kicau. Bang Wawan. Ya, saya juga grogi nih, Wan. Pertama kali live nih. Oke. Ntar, berarti Bang ini dulu. Siapa nama nih? Agus menganti. Saya tutup dulu Agus. Menganti, Agus menganti. Ah, nih. Kasih atas dulu. Bentar ya, saudara-saudara. Aisyah, kedengeran di situ. Kesini. Pindah dulu Aisyahnya. Saya stop dulu. Saya stop dulu ya, Bang Agus. Oke, Bang Agus sudah tahu berapa jam. Wait guys. 3 jam 46 menit. Oke, 3 jam 46 menit. Now we'll go to Nana Mardiana. Ya Allah ya Robi. Nana. Saying okay. Okay, now. Halo. Okay, we can see we have 6 people live. Oh, now 4. Oh, I see. Now become 4. Become 4. Or wait. Esa, kamu ada minum? Wait. Teh. Oke, ini berarti nanam ini. Oke. Itu ini ya. We have 4. Kopinya mana? Siap, kopi. Postu gue aman lancar kendali. Yes. Nah, itu masuk ini. Nah, dia. Nah, ada 6. Nadia Chan. Nadia San. Okay, one more. We have to waiting until one more. One more channel. Oke. Nah. Ya, ini mah gue sendiri ya. Esa, sini Bang. Enggak ada di sini. Nah, ini masuk. Oke. Halo. Nah. Nah, ada 6. Oh, now 5 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. Satu lagi mungkin Mr. Burchil. Pasti ono. Okay, guys, this book is published in 1993 atau diterbitkan tahun 1993, sekitar 34 tahun lalu ya. Oh, 34 tahun lalu. Tahun berapa sih, lupa nih. Secara tahunnya ya. Nah, ya 1993. Hmm. Contents ini ada maps, introduction, in the beginning, chapter 1, in the beginning, chapter 2, one God, chapter 3, a light to the Gentiles, chapter 4, Trinity, the Christian God, chapter 5, unity, the God of Islam, chapter 6, the God of philosophers, chapter 8, a God for reformers, chapter 9, enlightenment, chapter 10, the death of God, chapter 11, has God the future, glossary, notes, suggestion for further reading, and index. Okay. First we have maps here, maps in the Middle East, like this. Map also this, the Middle East in the first of history of man. So many maps here. Okay, introduction. Kopi. Susah ngirimnya kopi, bro. Okay, introduction. As a child, I had a number of strong religious beliefs, but little faith in God. There is a distinction between belief in a set of prepositions and a faith which enable us to put our trust in them. I believe in implicity in the existence of God. I also believe in the real presence of Christ in a Eucharist, the efficacy of the sacrament, the prospect of the eternal damnation, and the objective reality of purgatory. I cannot say, however, that my belief in this religious opinion about the nature of ultimate reality gave me much confidence that life here on earth was good or beneficent. The Roman Catholicism of my childhood was a rather frightening creed. James Joyce got it right in Portrait of the Artist of a Young Man. I listened to my share of hellfire sermons. In fact, hell seemed a more potent reality than God, because it was something that I could grasp imaginatively. God, on the other hand, was a somewhat shadow figure, defined in intellectual abstraction rather than image. When I was about 8 years old, I had no memories. This catechism answered the question, what is God? God is the supreme spirit who alone exists of himself and is infinite in all perfection. Not surprisingly, it means little to me, and I am bound to say that it still leaves me cold. It has always seemed a singularity arid, pompous, and arrogant definition. Since writing this book, however, I have gone to believe that it is also incorrect. Okay, that is chapter, no, that's paragraph 1. Now the paragraph 2. As I grew up, I realized that there was more to religion than fear. I read that Life of the Saint, the Metaphysics Books, T.S. Eliot, and some of the simpler writing of the mystics. I began to move by the beauty of the liturgy, and though God remained distant, I felt that it was possible to break through to Him, and that the vision would transfigure to the whole of the created reality. To do this, I entered a religious order, and as a novice and a young nun, I learned a good deal more about the faith. I apply myself to apologetics, scripture theology, and church history. I delve into the history of the monastic life and embark on a minute discussion of the rule of my own order, which we have to learn by heart. Strangely enough, God figures very little in any of this. Attention seemed focused on secondary details and the more peripheral aspect of religion. I wrestled in myself in prayer. I trying to force my mind to encounter God, but he remained a stream text master who observed my every infringement of the rule or tantalizingly absent. The more I read about the rapture of the saint, the more of a failure I felt. I was unhappy, aware that while little religious experience I had somehow been manufactured by myself, and I worked upon my own feeling and imagination. Sometimes a sense of devotion was a ascetic response to the beauty of the Gregorian chant and the liturgy. But nothing had actually happened to me from a source beyond myself. I never I never glimpsed God descriptive by the prophet and mystics. Jesus Christ, about whom we talk far more than about God, seemed a purely historical figure, inexorably embedded in a large antiquity. I also began to have grave doubt about some of the doctrine of the church. How could anybody possibly know for certain that the man Jesus has been God incarnate, and what did such a belief mean? Did the New Testament really treat the elaborate and highly contradictory doctrine of the Trinity, or was this, like so many other articles of the faith, a fabrication by theologians centuries after the death of Christ in Jerusalem? Paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. We have seven life. One, two, three, four. Nah, ya bang, nongkrongnya di warkop aja. Now, 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 paragraph 3. Eventually, with regret, I left the religious life and one freed of the burden of failure and inadequacy. I felt my belief in God slip quietly away. He had never really impinged upon my life, though I had done my best to enable him to do so. Now that I no longer felt so guilty and anxious about him, he became too remote to be a reality. My interest in religion continued. However, I made a number of television programs about the early history of Christianity and the nature of religious experience. The more I learned about the history of religion, the more my earlier misgivings were justified. The doctrine that I had accepted without question as a child were indeed man-made, constructed over a long period of time. Science seemed to have disposed of the creator God, and biblical scholars had proved that Jesus had never claimed to be divine. As an epileptic, I had flashes of vision that I knew to be a mere neurological defect. Had the vision and the rapture of the saint also been a mere mental quirk? Increasingly, God seemed an aberration, something that the human race had outgrown. Despite my cheer as a nun, I do not believe that my experience of God is unusual. My idea about God were formed in childhood and did not keep abreast of my growing knowledge in other disciplines. I had revised simplicity childhood fear of Father Christmas. I had come to a more mature understanding of the complexity of the human predicament than had been possible in the kindergarten. Yet, my early confused idea about God had now been modified or developed. People without my peculiarly, peculiarly religious background may also find that their notion of God was formed in infancy. Since those days, we have put away childish things and have discarded the God of our first year. Yet my study of the history of religion has revealed that human beings are spiritual animals. Indeed, there is a case for arguing that Homo sapiens is also human Homo religious. Man and woman started to worship God as soon as they become recognizable human. They created religion and at the same time as they created work of art. This was not simply because they wanted to propitiate powerful force, but this early faith expressed the wonder and the mystery that seem always to have been an essential component of the human experience of this belief, yet terrifying world. Like art, religion has been an attempt to find meaning and value in life, despite the suffering that flesh in, inherit too. Like any other human activity, religion can be abused, but it seems to have been something that we have always done. It was not tacked on the primordially secular nature by manipulate king and priest, but was naturally to humanity. Indeed, our current secularism is an entirely new experiment. Indeed, our current secularism is an entirely new experiment unprecedented in human history. We have yet to see how it will work. It is also true to say that our Western liberal humanism is not something that comes naturally to us. Like a preparation of an or pottery, it has to be cultivated. Humanism cultivated. Humanism is itself a religion without God. Not all religion, of course, are theistic. Our ethical secular idea had its own discipline of mind and heart and gives people the means of finding faith in the ultimate meaning of human life that were once provided by the more conventional religions. When I began to research when I began to research this history of the idea of the experiment of God and the three related monotheistic faith of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I expected to find that God had simply been a projection of human need and desire. I thought that He would mirror the fear and yearning of the society at each stage of its development. My predictions were not entirely unjustified, but I have been extremely surprised by some of my findings, and I wish that I had learned all this 30 years ago when I was starting out in the religious life. I would have saved me a great deal of anxiety to hear from eminent monotheism in all three faiths that instead of waiting for God to descend from on high, I should deliberately create a sense of Him for myself. Other rabbis, priests, and Sufis would have taken me to task for assuming that God was, in any sense, a reality of out there. They would have warned me not to expect to experience Him as an objective fact that could be discovered by the ordinary realization process. Esa, tin. They would have told me that in an important sense, God was product of creativity, imagination, like the poetry and music that I found so inspiring. A few highly respected monotheism would have told me quietly and firmly that God did not really exist, and yet that He was the most important reality in the world. This book will not be a history of the inevitable reality of God itself, which is beyond time and change. This book will not be a history of the inevitable reality of God itself, which is beyond time and change, but a history of the way man and woman have perceived him from Abraham to present day. The human idea of God has a history, since it has always meant something slightly different to each group of people who have used it at various points of time. The idea of God formed in one generation by one of said human being could be meaningless in another. Indeed, the statement I believe in God has no objective meaning as such, but like any other statement, it only means something in context. When proclaimed by a particular community. Consequently, there is not one unchanging idea contained in the word God, but the word contains a whole spectrum of meaning, some of which are contradictory or even mutually exclusive. Had the, no- had the notion of God not had this flexibility, it would not have survived to become one of the great human idea. When one conception of God has ceased to have meaning or relevance, it has been quietly discarded and replaced by a new theology. A fundamentalist who a fundamentalist would deny this since fundamentalism is anti-historical. It believes that Abraham, Moses, and the later prophet all experienced their God in exactly the same way as people do today. Yet, if we look at our three religions, it becomes clear that there is no objective view of God. Each generation has to create the image of God that works for them. The same is true of atheism. The statement, I do not believe in God, has always meant something slightly different at each period of history. The people who have been dubbed atheists over the years have always been denied a particular conception of the divine. Is the God who is rejected by atheists today the God of the patriotism, patriotics, patriots, the gods of prophets, the gods of philosopher, the god of the mystic, or the god of the 18th century days? All these deities have been venerated as the god of the Bible and the Quran by Jews, Christian, and Muslim at various points of the history. We shall see that they are very different from one another. Atheism has always been a transitional state. Jews, Christian, and Muslim were all called atheists by their pagan contemporaries because they had adopted a revolutionary notion of the divine and transcendence. Is, is modern atheism a similar denial of God, which is no longer adequate to the problem of our time? Despite its otherworldliness, religion is highly pragmatic. Okay, just wait for a while. Wait, I will share this to make this lower. Okay, let us see how many. Okay, now we have six. Six maybe with Bastiono, Burchil, and Burucilik. Despite its other worldliness, religion is highly pragmatic. We shall see that it is far more important for a particular idea of God to work than for it to be logical or scientifical sound. As soon as it ceases to be effective, it will be changed sometime for something radically different. This this did not disturb most monotheistic before our own day because they were quite clear that their idea about God were not sacrosanct but could only be professional. They were entirely man-made. They could be nothing else, and quite separate from the indesirable reality. Reality they symbolize some developed quite audacious way of emphasizing this essential distinction. One medieval mystic went so far as to say that this ultimate reality, mistakenly called God, was not even mentioned in the Bible. Throughout history, man and woman have experienced a dimension of the spirit that seemed to transcend the mundane world. Indeed, it is an interesting characteristic of the human mind to be able to conceive concepts that go beyond it in this way. However, we choose to interpret it. This human experience of transcendence has been a fact of life. Not everybody would regard it as divine. Buddhists, as we shall see, would deny that their vision and insight are derived from a supernatural source. They see them as a natural or as natural to humanity. All the major religions, however, would agree that it is impossible to describe this transcendence in normal conceptual language. Monotheistic have called this transcendence God, but they have hatched this around with important professor, professors. Jews, for example, are forbidden to pronounce the sacred name of God, and Muslims must not attempt to depict the divine in visual imagery. The discipline is a reminder the discipline is a reminder that the reality that we call God exceeds all human expression. Aisyah, beli yang anget, yang ada aja deh. This will not be a history in the usual sense, since the idea of God has not evolved from one point and progressed in a linear fashion to a final conception. Scientific notions work like that, but the idea of art and religion do not. Just as they are only given number of themes in a love poetry, so too people have kept saying the same thing about God over and over again. Indeed, we shall find a striking similarity in Jewish, Christian, and Muslim ideas of the divine. Even though Jews and Muslims both find the Christian doctrine of the Trinity and Incarnation almost blasphemous. They have provided they have produced their own version of these controversial theologies. Each expression of this universal theme is slightly different, however, showing the ingenuity and in- inventiveness of the human imagination as it struggled to express the sense of God. Because this is such a big subject, I have deliberately confined myself to the one God worshipped by Jews, Christian, and Muslim, though I have occasionally considered pagan, Hindu, and Buddhist conception of ultimate reality to make a monotheistic point clearer. It seems that the idea of God is remarkably close to idea in religion that develop quite independently. Whatever conclusion we reach about the reality of God, the history of this idea must tell us something important about the human mind and the nature of our aspiration. Despite the secular tenor of much Western society, the idea of God still affects the life of millions of people. Recent surveys have shown that 99% of Americans say that they believe in God. The question is which God of many is which God of the many on offer to they subscribe to. Theology often comes across as dull and abstract, but the story of God has been passionate and intense. Unlike some other conception of the ultimate, it was originally attended by agonizing struggle and stress. The prophet of Israel experienced their God as a physical pain that wrenched their every limb and filled them with rage and elation. The reality of the reality that they called God was often experienced by monotheists in the sense of extremely we shall read of mountain tops, darkness, desolation, crucifixion, and terror. The Western experience of God seemed particularly traumatic. What was the reason for this inheritance strain? Other monotheism spoke of light and transfiguration. They used very daring imaginary to express the complexity of the reality they experience, which went far beyond the orthodox theology. There has recently been a revived intense interest in the mythology, which may indicate a widespread desire for a more imaginative expression of religious truth. The work of the late American scholar Joseph Campbell had become extremely popular. He has explored the perennial mythology of mankind, linking ancient myths with those still current in traditional societies. It is often assumed that the three god religions are devoid of mythology and put symbolism. Yet, although monotheists originally rejected the myth of their pagan neighbor, this often crept back into the faith at a later date. Mystics have seen God incarnated in a woman. For example, others reverently speak of God's sexuality and have introduced a female element into the divine. This brings me to the difficult point because this god began as a specifically male deity. Monotheists have usually referred to it as he. In recent years, feminists have understandably objected to this, since I shall be recording the thought and insight of people who call God he. I have used the conventional masculine terminology, except when it has been more appropriate. Yet, it is perhaps worth mentioning that the masculine tenor of God talk is particularly problematic in English. In Hebrew, Arabic, and French, however, grammatical gender gives theological discovery in sort of sexual counterpoint and dialectic, which provide a balance that is often lacking in English. Thus, in Arabic, Allah, the supreme name for God, is grammatically masculine, but the word for the divine as instructable essence of God, that is feminine. All talk about God's stagger under impossible difficulties. Yet, monotheistic have all been very positive about language at the same time as they have denied its capacity to express the transcendent reality. The God of Jews, Christian, and Muslim is a God who, in some sense, speaks. His word is crucial in all three faiths. The Word of God has shaped the history of our culture. We have to decide whether the word God has any meaning for us today. Note, since I'm working at the history of God from the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim perspective, the term BC, the term BC and AD, which are conventionally used in the West, are not appropriate. I have therefore had recourse to the alternative of BCE, before the Common Era, and CE, Common Era. Chapter 1. In the beginning. In the beginning, human being created a God who was the first cause of all things and ruler of heaven and earth. He was not represented by image and had no temple or priest in his service. He was too exalted for an inadequate human cult. Gradually, he faded from the conception of these people. He had become so remote that they decided that they did not want him anymore. Eventually, he was said to have disappeared. That, at least in one theory, popularized by Father Wilhelm Smith in The Origin of the Idea of God, first published in 1912, Smith suggested that there had been a primitive monotheism before man and woman had started to worship a number of gods. Originally, they had acknowledged only one supreme deity who had created the world and governed human affairs from afar. Belief in such a high god, sometimes called the sky god, since he is associated with the heavens, is still a feature of religious life in many indigenous African tribes. They yearn toward God in prayer, believe that He is watching over them and will punish wrongdoing. Yet He is generally absent from their daily lives. He was no special cult and is never depicted in effigy. The tribesmen say the tribe the tribesmen say that he is inexpressibly and cannot be contaminated by the word of man. Some people say that he has gone away. Anthropologists suggested that this god had become so distant and exalted that he has in fact been replaced by lesser spirit and more assessed gods. So too, Smith's therefore goes in ancient time. The high god was replaced by the more attractive gods of the pagan pantheon. In the beginning, therefore, there was one God. If this is so, then monotheism was one of the earliest ideas evolved by the human being to explain the mystery and tragedy of life. It also indicates some of the problem that such a deity might have to face. It is impossible to prove this one way or the other. There have been many theories about the origin of religion, yet it seems that creating gods is something that human beings have always done. When one religious idea ceases to work for them, it is simply replaced. This idea disappears quietly like the sky god, with no great fanfare in our one day. Many people would say that the god worshipped for centuries by Jews, Christian, and Muslim has become as remote as the sky god. Some have actually claimed that he had died. Certainly, he seemed to be disappearing from the life of an increasing number of people, especially in Western Europe. They speak of God's shaped hole in their consciousness where he used to be. Because irrelevant though he may seem in certain quarter, he has played a crucial role in our history and have been one of the greatest human idea of all time. To understand that they were losing, if that is, he really is disappearing, we need to see what people were doing when they began to worship this God, what he meant and how he was conceived. To do that, we need to go back to the ancient world of the Middle East, where the idea of our God gradually emerged about 14 years ago. One of the reasons why religion seems irrelevant today is that many of us no longer have the sense that we are surrounded by the unseen. Our scientific culture educates us to focus our attention on the physical and material world in front of us. This method of looking at the world has achieved great results. One of one of its consequences, however, is that we have, as it were, edited out the sense of the spiritual or the holy, which pervade the life of people in more traditional societies in every level, and which has one an essential component of our human experience of the world. In the South Sea island, they call this mysterious force mana. Other experience it others experience others experience it as a presence of spirit. Sometimes it has been felt as impersonal power, like a form of tra- like a form of radioactivity or electricity. It was believed to reside in the tribal chief in plant, rock, or animal. The Latin experience Numina, spirits in the sacred groves. Arabs felt that the landscape was populated by the jinn. Naturally, people wanted to get in touch with this reality and make it work for them. But they also simply wanted to admire it. When they when they personalized the unseen force and made them gods associated with the wind, sun, sea, and star, but possessing human characteristics. They were expressing their sense of affinity with the unseen and with the world around them. Rudolf Otto, the German historian of religion who published his important books, The Idea of Holy in 1911, in 1917, believed that this sense of the numinous was basic to religion. It preceded any desire to explain the origin of the world or find a basis for either behavior. The numinous power was sensed by human beings in different ways. Sometimes it inspired wild, bacchanalian excitement, sometimes a deep calm. Sometimes people felt dread, awe, and humility in the presence of the mysterious force inherent in every aspect of life. When people began to devise their myths and worship their god, they were not seeking to find a literal explanation for natural phenomena. The symbolic stories, cave painting, and carving were an attempt to express their wonder and to link this pervasive mystery with their own life. Indeed, poets, artists, and musicians are often impelled by a similar desire today. In the Paleolithic period, for example, when agriculture was developing, the cult of the mother goddess expressed a sense that the fertility which was transforming human life was actually sacred. Artists carved those statues depicting her as a naked, pregnant woman, which archaeologists have found all over Europe, the Middle East, and India. The Great Mother remained imaginatively important for centuries, like the old sky god. She was absorbed into later pantheon and took her place alongside the older deities. She was usually one of the most powerful of the gods, certainly more powerful than the sky god, who remained a rather shadow figure. She was called Inanna in ancient Sumeria, Ishar in Babylon, Anat in Canaan, Isis in Egypt, Aphrodite in Greece, and remarkably similar stories were devised in all this century culture to express her role in the spiritual life of the people. These myths were not intended to be taken literally, but were metaphorical attempt to desire a reality that was too complex and elusive to express in the other way. These dramatic and evocative stories of God and goddess help people to articulate their sense of the powerful but unseen force that surrounded them. Indeed, it seemed that in the ancient world, people believed that it was only by participating in this divine life that they would become truly human. Early life was officially fragile and overshadowed by mortality, but but if man and woman imitated the action of the god, they would share to some degree their greater power and effectiveness. Thus, it was said that the god has shown men how to build their cities and temples, which were mere copies of their own homos in the divine realm. The sacred word of gods, as recounted in myth, was not just an ideal toward which men and women should aspire, but was the prototype of human existence. It was the original pattern of the archetype on which our life here below had been modeled. Everything on earth was thus believed to be a replica of something in the divine world. Perception that informed the mythology, ritual, and social organization of most of the culture of, of antiquity and continues to influence. In ancient, every simple person or object in the mundane world yet it was held to have its counterpart in the ancestral world of sacred reality, Menok. This is a perspective that is difficult for us to appreciate in the modern world, since we see autonomy and independence as supreme human value. Yet the famous text post quotium only animal thesis s still express a common experience. After an intense and eagerly anticipated moment, we often feel that we have missed something greater than remain just beyond our grasp. The imitation of God is still an important religious notion, resting of the Sabbath or washing somebody feet on Monday, Thursday. Actions that are meaningless of themselves are now significant and sacred because people believe that they were once performed by God. A similar spirituality had characterized the ancient world of Mesopotamia. The Tigris, the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, in what in now Iraq, had been inhabited as early as 4000 BCE by the people known as the Sumerian, who had established one of the first great culture of the Oikumene, the civilized world. In the cities of Ur, Erech, and Kish, the Sumerian devised their cuneiform script, built the extraordinary temple tower called ziggurats, and evolved an impressive law, literature, and liturgy. Not long afterward, the region was invaded by the Semitic Akkadian, who had adopted the language and culture of Sumer. Later still, in about 2000 BCE, the Amorites had conquered the Sumerian Akkadian civilization and made Babylon their capital. Finally, some 500 years later, the Assyrian had settled in nearby Assur and eventually conquered Babylon itself during the 8th century BCE. The Babylonian tradition also affected the mythology and religion of Canaan, which would become the promised land of the ancient Israelites. Israelites. Like other people in the ancient world, people in the ancient world, the Babylonian attributed their culture to the gods, who had revealed their own lifestyle to their mystical ancestor. Thus, Babylon itself was supposed to be a which each of one of its temple a replica of a celestial palace. This link with the divine world was celebrated and perpetuated annually in the Great New Year festival, which had been firmly established by the 17th century BCE, celebrated in the holy city of Babylon during the month of Nisan or April. The festival solemnly enthroned the king and established his reign for another year. Yet, this political stability could only endure insofar as it participated in the more enduring and effective government of the gods, who had brought order out of primordial chaos when they had created the world. The 11 sacred days of the festival thus projected the participant outside profane time into the sacred and internal world of the gods by means of ritual gesture. A scapegoat was killed to cancel the old dying year, the public humiliation of the king, and the enthronement of the carnival king in his place to reproduce the original chaos. A mock battle reenacted the struggle of the gods against the force of destruction. This symbol action thus had a sacramented value. They enable the people of Babylon to immerse themselves in the sacred power This symbolic action thus had a sacramental value. They enabled the people of Babylon to immerse. On the afternoon of the fourth day of the festival, priests and clerics filed into the Holy of Holies to recite the Elis, the epic poem which celebrates the victory of the gods over chaos. The story was not a factual account of the physical origin of life on Earth, but was a deliberately symbol attempt to suggest a great mystery to release its sacred power. A literal account of creation was impossible since nobody had been present at this unimaginable event. Myth and symbol were thus the only suited way describing them. A brief look at the Alice gives us some insight into the spirituality which gave birth to our own Creator God centuries later. Even though the biblical and Quranic account of creation would ultimately take a very different form, this strange myth never entirely disappeared but would re-enter the history of God at a much later date, clothed in the monotheistic idioms. Okay, we will as we will read again from this chapter. Okay, see you next time. Thank you for our live streaming.